Hello everyone, good evening. I'm sharing my screen. So we'll get started with VBCS today, guys. So we're done with the integrations track. We need to create one more integration, but we will create that integration, the AR invoice REST API as part of end-to-end solution. So we don't need it now. So we will go into VBCS. VBCS, it stands for Visual Builder Cloud Service. How do you access VBCS, guys? So from OIC instance, if you click on the main navigator, you see that there's an option to access VBCS from here. So it stands for Visual Builder Cloud Service. And what do you normally do in here? You build a custom screens. So you can build custom web or mobile applications using VBCS. So if your client needs any custom application, like expense report application, travel report application, or AR invoice application, you can build it in VBCS. So you go into VBCS application. So for VBCS, Google Chrome is the recommended browser, guys. So for integrations of PCS, Firefox is a recommended browser, but for VBCS, Chrome is a recommended browser. Now, first things first, when you go into VBCS application or when you go to VBCS screen, I logged in as user one here. And when you log in as a specific user into VBCS, you would be able to see the applications that this particular user has created. So let me create a new application here. I'm going to call it UG63 HR Web App. So we're going to start off with a HR Web application, and we will use this application to understand all the building blocks of VBCS. Okay, so I say HR Web App, finish. And we'll come back and discuss the options that we see here. But if you see this application, since I created this application, HR Web App as user one, so this user is able to see this application. Now let me log into OIC instance as a different user. I'm going to log in as approver one. Don't get misleaded by the word approver. Just think of it as another user. Okay, since I want to use this user in approvals as an approver, I've used that particular word as a last name. But think of it as any other user. Okay, so I'm trying to log into the application as a different user here, not user one. And after you log in, you can go into the menu options here, VBCS. And what's the first thing that you see here? You see a message which says browser is not supported, right? So yes, VBCS, the moment you try to access it from a different browser, you see this pop-up. It says you should use Google Chrome for the best results. So you just click on OK. And I'm going to reduce the zoom size a little bit. Now here, I'm able to see only one application here. So why is this user not seeing this application? Because this is an application that this particular user has created. So the way user control works in or access control works in VBCS is wherever user comes into the screen, they get to see the applications that they have created. So since I created this, I can see it. And the second thing is sometimes you build complex web apps. And you might build, say, 5 to 10 pages within a single application. And you might want your colleague to work with you on a specific application. Maybe you're taking care of one flow and your friend is taking care of another flow, or your colleague. So say, for example, if I want this guy to help me with this application build, how can I grant access of this application to this user? Get into the application, go into settings, team. You can add a team members here. So I created this user. So only I have access to it. And I can go ahead and add this particular user as a team member to this application here. So I'm adding approver 1 here as a team member. I'm adding approver 1 as a team member. Now, the moment you add this user as a member, as a team member in this application, so the moment this guy refreshes a screen, he would start seeing that application. Okay, so which means, yes, when you're going to VBCS, you get to see the applications that you have created, and you also get to see the applications that you were given access to by others. And if you are a developer, you don't see any option at the top here. But if you are an administrator, you see this option which says administered by me. So which means when you tick this box, you not only get to see the applications that you created as a developer, but since you are also a service administrator, the moment you tick this, you would be able to see all the applications as well. Okay, so even if this user created any application, say for example, test approver. So I created this application as approver 1, right? So since this is application that I created as approver 1, so that would not be visible to this particular user here by default. But since he's an administrator, even if he refreshes it, he wouldn't get to see it. But since he's an administrator, the moment he ticks this box, what would happen? At the moment we see 13. The moment you click on it, it becomes 14. The moment you click on it, it becomes 14 now. And you are able to see that application showing up at the top. Okay, so that's with regards to the access control. Now so you get to see the applications that you created or the ones that you were given access to it. And if you are an administrator, you can see all the applications that everybody else has created. And we open this application, HR Web App. And within our VBCS application, yes, you're basically building a web application here. Web application, think of it as a website. So what are the two things that you need in a website? First of all, you need to have a data source. Okay, you need to have data to display in our application. And after you connect to our data sources, you need to build a user interface or a screens to display the data. Now, what are the two possible data sources that you could use in VBCS app? So one obvious option is you can create business objects or tables within the VBCS application, and you can store data within them. And yes, you can create tables or business objects, store data within them, and you display the data in the user interface. And when user performs CRUD operations here, you would be performing those CRUD operations in a business object itself directly. But in some VBCS application, you might have to pull the data from other application and display it as part of your VBCS app. Or you might also want to send the data from VBCS app to another application. Okay, could be ERP cloud, HCM cloud, Salesforce, doesn't matter. So in case you have to pull the data from other application and display it as part of your VBCS app, or in case you have to push the data from VBCS app and send it to other application, you can make use of service connections and REST APIs within them to achieve that. And after you connect to a data sources, what's the next step, guys? Next step is that you build the user interface, screens which user would access, and perform the CRUD operations. Okay, earlier in the old versions of VBCS, we had an option to build web applications and mobile applications separately. You see one block here, one block was missing, and that block was a mobile application. So earlier, until 3 months back, until the previous release of VBCS, we had an option to build a mobile application in VBCS. Mobile means a native mobile application. So meaning you build an application and you can publish that application to Android, Google Play Store or Apple Store, and you can ask the users to install it from there. And that's what we call as native mobile app. But we no longer can build a native mobile applications in VBCS. That's not possible anymore. But yes, the user interface that you build is much more responsive now. It works both on the desktops as well as mobile devices as well. Okay. And how do you circulate the web application to be used on a mobile device? That's what we call as a PWA. So we'll talk more about this when we build the fourth application. And sometimes when you build a VBCS app, yes, user would access the application and submit a request. And yes, in most cases, at the enterprise level, the request submitted by the users from VBCS needs to go through the approval flows, So that's when we make use of this process option. To kick off approval process built in PCS. So there's one more cloud service called PCS, right? So you can build approval process there, and you can call it from a VBCS application using this option. And in addition to that, yes, when you create a web app, there would be 100 plus UI components that get added by default to the application. If you need any additional UI components to be used here, then you can make use of this option to install those additional components and use them in the interface build. So we will create 4 applications as part of VBCS. So the first application would be a HR web app. And in this application, we'll see how to use business objects as a data source. And we will build the responsive application, a web app as a screen. It would be a web application or a desktop application. And in the second application, we will explore how to use REST APIs as a data source. And we will build the screens again as a desktop application or as a responsive application. HR web app, it would be business objects plus web app. The second application, REST APIs, we will see how to use service connections as a data source, and then we will build the screen as well. And after we build the first 2 applications, so when you build these 2 applications, you might still be not clear on how exactly clients would be using VBCS in real time, or why exactly clients need to use VBCS. So what I do is, yes, we will, after we do the first 2 applications, I'm going to set the context for end-to-end solution. So we'll create one end-to-end solution, and in this end-to-end solution build, I'm going to show you how to build a complex VBCS with that. Kick off an approval process you build in PCS format. After approvals are obtained, we'll show you how to kick off a REST API and push the data to ERP cloud. So I'll show you how to build this end-to-end flow as part of the course. And this would be the third application that we're going to build. And when I set the context for when I explain the solution, you would clearly understand how and why clients would be using all the 3 cloud services would be in OIC to build end-to-end flows. And as a last application, we will build a mobile app in VBCS. So we'll see how to build a screen targeting a mobile device. And the most important part is we'll talk about how to distribute that application as a PWA. So we'll focus on that in the fourth application. And this HR web app, let me show you how that application is going to look like, guys. So I'll go ahead and give access of UJ62. I'm going to open UG63. The reason I'm giving access to 63 here is it will be easy to explain if I show you the screens. So, sorry, UG62. So this is application that we're going to build first, a HR web app. And with this web application, I'm going to explain all the basics that you need to know in VBCS. Like we'll try to understand all the basics of VBCS with this example. So it's a HR web app used by HR team. Yes, on the landing page, we display the list of employees in 2 different formats, a tabular and a graphical format. And any application, any web app you build, adding a CRUD functionality to the application would be a bare minimum requirement that you get. Even in Fusion Cloud application, guys, any screen you go into, you would see options to perform CRUD operations, right? You see a create employee, update employee, delete employee, and so on. Right. So we'll see how to add the CRUD functionality to the VBCS application. And we'll also see how to add standalone pages if, to the application if required. And we'll talk about each and every feature in depth. So this is the application that we need to build here. Now, first things first, so we need to create a data model for it. So what is the data that we need for this application? We need employees information. And when we create an employee, we put employee into a department. So we need employee business object. We need one business object to store employees, another one to store the departments. So if we add, so we need another business object to store departments. I'll show you how to achieve this LOV feature. And apart from this departments, we also need the locations as well. So 3 business objects we need for the HR web app, 3 business objects. So you go into business objects and you go ahead and put them in here first. So we need 3 business objects, employee, locations, and departments. So one way to add a business object is, one easy way to add a business object is just click on it and add it manually. Give it a name. And as you type in name, remember in the business object name, we should not have a plural label. So no S at the end, and say create. Say create. I see the department business object and you go into fields. And in the fields, what do we see? We see ID column. And we also see who columns in here. Creation date created by, last update date and last updated by. Okay, so the ID column would be added by default, which acts like a primary key, And we also see the who columns added here. Creation date created by, last update date, last updated by, and the version number. We can add additional columns if you want here. So what are the other columns that we need? Say, for example, I need department name. So you add a column here, select the data type, varchar data type, and you say create. And I also want to store the target number of employees I want to have in a particular department. So I say target number field. And I can also add in employees into the business object as well from the backend. So I can go into data tab and create a new row. And you see that the ID would be auto-generated. And let's say I want to have 3 departments here. Sales. And I want to have marketing, IT, 2 employees. So we've created this business object with fields in it. And we have 3 employees in it. And yes, we need to, so this is one obvious way to create a required data model. Add a business object manually, add the number of fields and data rows into it. So as I explain this, at least some of you might be thinking about it, right? So this is not going to be feasible always. Because sometimes when you create a web application, you might need 10 or 15 business objects. And you might have to add 30 or 40 columns here. And into a business object, you might need 50 or 100 data rows, or maybe 1,000 as well in some cases. So is there any better way to manage the data here? So that's precisely why Oracle has given a data manager here. So when you click on this menu option, you see a data manager. And this would give you an option to easily and effectively manage application data. So if you have data in an Excel sheet or a CSV sheet, and if you want to import that into a VBCS application, very well do so with the help of this option, import business objects. So yes, if you go into this folder, if you go into HR web app folder, you would see an Excel sheet in it. And if you open the Excel sheet, you should be able to see the employees information on it. Okay, so you've got employees and locations, two tabs. And in the employees tab, you see you see a header row and you see a list of employees here. And in the locations also you have a header row and you have list of employees here. Sorry, list of locations here. So if you have data in a spreadsheet like this, you can import this into VBCS app. So you just say import business objects. Select that Excel sheet and you say upload. So the moment you upload it, upload in the sense upload it to a VBCS, you see that there are two business objects that are going to get created, employee and locations. And there are 8 employees in it. There are 8 employees in it. And you see 13 locations in here. They go to the next screen and you take out the plural label in the business object name, employee and location. And in the case of employees, what do we see here? So whatever 6 columns that we have in the header, whatever 6 employee columns that we have, so you see those columns added here. And along with these columns, you also see the ID column and the who columns as well added automatically. And for these columns again, what is the data type? So VBCS will look at the first row. VBCS will look at the first data row and decide what data type is appropriate for these columns. So VBCS will look at the first data row to understand what data type is appropriate for these columns. So if you look at the start date, so we cannot have a date and so you have date and a timestamp here. So that's why it's proposing date and timestamp, but you can change it to a date data type instead of date and time. Because normally on the start date, we only store the date, not the timestamp. So this way you can make any changes if you require. Go into the locations tab, and in the locations tab, you see there are 2 columns in it, country and city. And you have ID and who column. So it doesn't really matter whether you create a business object manually or through Excel import. So ID and who columns get added automatically. Click on finish. Close. Now you notice that 2 more business objects are imported here. So you see employee and you see the employee fields here. ID column, who columns, and the other columns that we have in Excel sheet. And if you go into data tab, you also see the data imported here. And the same applies for location as well. You see the department data, city and country, and you also see the data here, the data rows. And just to show you more, a few more permutations and combinations, like when HR team tries to create an employee, yes, they would be putting employee into a department here. They would be putting employee into a department here. They would be putting employee into a department here. So we need to show this department. We need to show the department as a reference field in the employee business object. We need to show the department as a reference field in the employee business object. So how do we add it? So we go ahead and add a department. I'm an employee business object. I'm going to add department here, not as a varchar field, but I'm going to add it as a reference field. So in this field, I want to show the list of departments from the department business object. So I'm going to show department names as list of values in this field. You say create. And we need location as well. I'm also going to add this as a reference field. And we can also add Boolean values as well if we want. And whenever you add a field, if you want, you can also set up a default value as well. Say, for example, on the manager field, I want to set up a default value as false. So yes, usually there will be very few managers when compared to employees. So whenever employee is created, I want the manager flag to be set to false. but user can overwrite it if they want. Okay, and we can also put in aggregation logic as well if you want. Say, for example, if you go into department business object, remember there is a relationship between department and employee, right? Because I've added department field in the employee. So every employee belongs to a department. So you could say that a department is kind of a parent and employee is its child. So since you have a parent-child relationship between department and employee here, you see the relationship. So since you have the parent-child relationship, what I can do is I can add in a field called total employees here, and I can add it as an embo field. And on the field, I can set up an aggregation logic if I want. So I can say aggregate from related object data. Remember, department and employee are related business objects. So I say aggregate from related object data. And I say get the employees using a department. So if there are 10 employees in a department, so get the count of that employees and display it in this particular field in the total employees field. Okay. So we can, and we can close the data model here. Now we have set up all this data model, right? So where exactly is this information stored in the backend, guys? So this information, whatever information that you see here, this information is stored in backend in a ATP database. So the Vbcs application, whenever you create a new OIC instance, and the moment you enable Vbcs, a Vbcs would be provisioned with a embedded database attached to it. So if you go into settings here, you go into settings, tenant database, you would be able to see the embedded database here. You would be able to see the embedded database here. So if you go in here, so Vbcs comes with an embedded or a default database. So when you come in here for the first time, you will see an embedded database that Vbcs comes with. But there are two problems with it. The first problem is it comes with a 5 GB data limit. It comes with a 5 GB data limit, so which is good for nothing. And the second important problem is we cannot access this database from SQL Developer. Now tell me one thing, guys, what details do we need if we have to connect to ATP database, guys? What details do we need if we have to connect to ATP-DB?
Username.
Okay, username and password, that's fine. And what else we need?
Wallet file.
Wallet file as well, and the service name as well, right? So these are all the details that you need when you have to connect to an ATP-DB, right? So we need the admin password, we need the wallet file, we need the service name. But the default database or embedded database that comes with Vbcs, Oracle is not going to give you that wallet file, or it's not going to share the password of that database, of the embedded database. So which means this database or embedded database or default database is not useful for us at all, because you have 5 GB data limit, which is good for nothing. And since you don't have the connection details, we cannot even connect to it from SQL Developer. And what it also means is there is something called as ORDS. With ORDS, what you can do is you can write a SQL or PLSQL in a database, and you can expose it as a REST API with ORDS procedures. So we'll talk about this in a lot more detail in a future session. Like in ATP-DB, if you want, you can write the custom SQL or PLSQL logic, and you can expose it as REST APIs with ORDS. But since we are not able to even connect to a database using SQL Developer, where do you write that SQL, PL SQL? It's out of question, right? So that's why these are the two major problems with embedded database. So the first thing that you need to do, guys, I repeat it one more time. The first thing that you do when you do a Vbcs development is to replace the embedded database that Vbcs comes with and point it to your own ATP-DB. So you need to ask the client to create an ATP, ADW, or database as a service. So you can use the same database that you have used in the integrations here as well. You can use the same database that you have used in integrations here as well. That is one thing that we can do. And we also or a client can create a separate database. But yes, once you have a separate database provision, and once the details are shared with you, what is it that we need to do? We just have to come into the screen, Vbcs settings screen, and you need to edit it. And when you edit it, what is it that you're going to do? You need to upload an ATP database wallet file here. You need to upload the wallet file. So you have, if you go into downloads, Geeks ATP DB. So you upload the wallet file, you upload the wallet password, DB username is going to be admin, and you enter the password of admin user. So you're going to enter all the details here. So the first thing that you need to do, even before you build your first VBCS app, is come here, replace the embedded database with your own ATP database. I've already done that, guys. I've already done this. That is where you see what is the VBCS application pointing to which database it is pointing to, guys. Geeks ATP DB. So I've already modified the database, or I've already updated the database attached to VBCS here from embedded database to the custom DB. Here. So which means whatever actions you perform in VBCS, will be reflected in this ATP DB. Now I'll go ahead and get connected to this ATP DB. It's the same DB that I used in the integrations track. And this is what we did in the front end. What did we do, guys? We created a VBCS app. Within the application, we created business objects. We created 3 business objects, and within the business objects, we added fields. And we also inserted data rows into the business object. Create a business object, add fields to them, insert rows into the business object. Now, this is what we did in the front end. And what has happened in the background, guys? In the DB attached to VBCS, there will be a new user or schema created for every VBCS application. And whatever business objects that you create in VBCS would be created as table. Fields would be columns, and rows in the business object would be records in the table. Now, how do I know which is a schema created for VBCS app? I can go back to the VBCS application, click on the menu option here, settings. And when you go to business objects, here you will be able to see the schema. So this is a schema created in ATP DB. So you can also do a select start from all users. And you say order by created descending. So if you want to see the users which are created recently, looks like there are 3 users created. Looks like few of you are practicing along. And this is an application that is created, or this is a user created for my VBCS app. So this is the one. And if you want to see what all tables are owned by this particular schema, so for a VBCS application, there would be a schema created or a user created. And within that schema, there would be 3 tables created. Remember, we have 3 tables in a VBCS app, right? So these 3 business objects are created as tables in this particular schema. So if I say where owner equal to a schema name, you would be able to see the business objects here. I didn't copy the right one, I believe. Yeah. So if you see the business object now, so these are the 3 tables that this person are created. These 3 tables are created in the schema. And how do you query them? So if I want to query employee table, I just have to say schema name dot a table name. So this is how you can access the tables. You can see whatever data that we have in this particular table, whatever data you have in employee business object, you're able to access all of this information, the business objects and the data rows here by connecting to a DB. But this gives us all the flexibility that we need to do a complex web application development in VBCS. And if you create any new business object, say for example, if I create a test business object here, if I create a test business object, that would also get reflected back in the schema here. That would be created in a schema here. Okay, so whatever business objects you create would be created as tables within the schema. If you go ahead and run this, that particular schema is deleted. Okay, so now what is it that we need to do? We have a data model set up, and we need to build the screens to display data in the user interface. So how do you do it? You go into web app, create a web application, and you call it HR web app. And in a HR web application, now when you create a screen, you need to ask yourself, do you want to display multiple navigation items or not? So in a HR web app, do you want to have separate tabs, one for employee, one for department, and so on? So do you want to have multiple navigation items? If the answer is no, then you go with the first option. If the answer is yes, I need multiple navigation items like this one, or multiple flows, then you can display those navigation items either here in the navigation drawer, or you can also display the navigation items here at the bottom of the screen. You can also display those options at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so I just need two options, employee and department. So you have a web app created, and within the web application, you see two flows created. And within each flow, you have a start page. So the first flow that you have, remember in this web app, this is the first flow I had, and the first flow start page would be the landing page for the application. Okay. Now I'm going to click on this one again. It minimizes everything. So you have an employee start page created. And in the employee start page, you see that there is a header section and there is a line section. Sorry, the footer section. So we can go ahead and change the header and footer of the application from a shell page. Remember, whenever you create a web app, there would be a root pages that get created, and within the root pages, you have a shell page. Now, within the shell page you have, remember earlier it used to be a single page, but now Oracle as VBCS has broken it down into 3 fragments here. You see a shell header fragment, you see a footer fragment, and you see a shell drawer fragment as well. So you see 3 fragments here. So the shell page is a kind of a root page, which will control the header and footer of every page of the application. And it used to be a single page earlier, but it is now broken down into pieces again. So you can go into shell header and footer if you want to do some changes in it. So I go into shell header and I want to say change this heading to HR web app. And I want to change the icon to a human symbol. And I also want to, just give me one more. So you see a human symbol, you see the heading here. And when you go into a footer, in the footer, what do you normally see in any website footer, guys? Say, for example, if you go to oracle.com, what do you normally see in a footer? You would see links to access other important pages within the application, right? So you see links to access other important pages within the application. So in an exactly similar fashion, what we are basically creating here is a web app. So you see that there are 4 hyperlinks created. And if you're building quite a few pages in the application, you can make these hyperlinks point to the other application pages, meaning when I click on it, I can launch another page. So how does the hyperlinks work? I'll show it to you in the next application. But in this application, yes, we don't need any footers. So I'm going to delete this. And I also don't need this. We can also fine tune this text as well that you want. So you can, it is coming from a variable here. You can overwrite it if you want. Okay. So you can say this, it is created for HSBC. Okay, you can put in whatever text you want. And after you fine tune the header and footer, you can close the employee start page and you can open the start page again. Open the start page again, and this is how it's going to look like. So you can go ahead and build the application from here on. So what's the heading that we want to see? We want to display the heading as list of employees. I'm going to add this in. I would change it to list of employees. And in the landing page, what is it that we want to do is we want to display the page. In the landing page, we want to display the page into or split the page into two sections. First of all, we want to split the page into into two sections here, a 2/3 section. And in the 2/3 section, we want to display the list of employees in a tabular format. Okay, we want to display employee name, email, and the salary. And in the 1/3 section, we want to display the list of employees in a tabular format. We want to display list of employees in a tabular format. So this is what we want to do on a landing page, display the list of employees in two different formats on a landing page. And how do we do this? The first thing that I need to do is split the page into two sections. Split the page into two sections. Okay, 2/3 section and the 1/3 section. And in the first 2/3 section, we wanted to display the list of employees in a tabular format. So how do we display a page into multiple sections? First of all, we would make use of a component called panel here. So if you see here, now don't get overwhelmed by the options that you see here, because you see a lot of things in here, a lot of tabs at the top and a lot of UI components here. Don't worry too much about it. As we progress in the course, we'll be talking about each one of them. So first things first, I want to split the page into two sections. So I need to use a panel component and drop it in here. And the moment I drop in a panel component, it would by default occupy 12 rows. I'm going to bring it down to 8 rows. And I'm going to drop in the panel again. And this is going to be 4 columns. So 2/3 and 1/3 section. And in the 2/3 section, I want to drop in a table first. And I want to display in the table, the employee information. So the moment you drop in a table or a collection element, one good thing that you see here is, guys, the moment you drop in a collection element, you will be able to see 4 tabs in here. And the 5th tab would be a quick start option. So this quick start option is going to help you to map the table to a data source. So quick start option would help you to map the table to a data source. Okay. So from which table do you want to display the data here? And also, not just that, the table component or a collection component also makes it easy for you to add the CRUD pages to the application. Okay, so we'll see how these 4 options will be quite handy in VBC as well in tomorrow's session. But for now, I can just go ahead and map the table to a data source. I just say add data. And what data do I want to display, guys? I want to display employees information here. I select employee. Go to the next screen. You display employee name, email, and salary. And salary, I don't want to display it as a text field. Instead, I want to show it as a currency field. So go to the next screen and click on done. Now, whatever employees you have in a table would be displayed here. Now, just to show you the possibilities, if you want, you can also display the employee details in a tabular format here. So you see that there are a variety of graphical options to display the data. We have a lot of charts and other UI components as well. So we need to go ahead and drop in a bar chart here. We need to go ahead and drop in a bar chart here. And we need to map the bar chart to a data source. Okay. So what data do we want to display? We want to display the employee's information here. We want to display the employee name here and the salary here. So you select employee. And I want to display employee salary on the y-axis and employee name on the x-axis. And if two employees have same salary, I want to display them with the same color so that it will be easy for us to understand which employees are equally paid, right? So I want the graph to be colored based on a salary. So I'm going to select salary as a color series. Go ahead and click on finish. So this is how you build a simple user interface. So I've dropped in two panel components, table and a graph. And if you want to see how this application is going to look like to the end user, how do we do it? We click on play option. And when you click on preview or play at the top, it's going to show you how the application is going to look like to the end user. So yes, on the landing page, we see the list of employees in two different formats, table and a graphical format here. And you can also fine tune the graph as well. So for the labels here, so you can say department name or say employee name. I'm going to call it as employee salary. So you can also fine tune the labels as well. So this way you can go ahead and make whatever changes you want in the user interface, and that would keep getting reflected as well. If you show this HR web app to probably the administrator, what is the first thing that is going to say? This is fine. Can you give me a provision to add the CRUD function? Can you give me the CRUD functionality first of all? So yes, I'm seeing a list of employees, but I should be in a position to create, update, or delete an employee, right? Because ultimately HR team is going to do it from the front end. They're going to do the CRUD operations. So in tomorrow's session, we'll see how to perform these CRUD operations and how to add them quite easily to VBCS app using quick start option. We'll also see how to add standalone pages as well. Okay. And when we see how to add the CRUD pages, you would also understand how this data is pulled from VBCS, pulled from ATP-DB and displayed it in the VBCS application as well. So we'll talk about the data interaction as well in tomorrow's session. Any questions, guys?
Prashant, Sachin here.
Yeah, please go on.
There is no way we can like have VBCS access with Fusion, right?
No.
Connectivity
You need
database.
to know what you need to do was you need to build a scheduled orchestration, and from the scheduled orchestration you kick off a BIP report, get the required data from Fusion Cloud, and dump the data into ATP tables because this is a table in ATP, right?
Yes.
So when we did the outbound flow, we have seen how to kick off a BIP report, and we have seen how to insert the data from a BIP report into ATP tables. So that is what you need to do. If you have to access some information from Fusion Cloud, you can do an initial dump when you go live. And every hour or every day, you can set up a scheduled sync from Fusion Cloud tables to VBCS if you want. Okay, scheduled orchestration, BIP. And the BIP data, you're going to sync it to the ATP tables.
Okay.
Any other questions, guys, from anyone?
Prasad, since it's a very basic session of VBCS, what is SDP and what is ADP and what we are using here to create this HR web app?
I haven't used ADP, but we are using SDP here. So what is SDP? We'll talk about it in detail tomorrow.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.